I hope our internet will be good enough. So we want to work with Java, and these are some of the examples that we've got. We want to just pick maybe an example, explain how we can do certain things. It's a basic course, so we don't want to make life complicated, but we just want to learn how we do the beginner sessions of Java. Okay, so Java pretty much is a programming language that we can use the following. So the IDE we can work with is called Netbeans. So we can actually download it. So it does quite a number of things. We go to download, and then the latest version is 12 with an update 3. Okay, we can actually download that, and then it tells us the options that we've got, when this was released, and the versions we can get. So I'll pick the first one, which is Apache NetBeans. It then takes us to that site. I click on it, and then we've got our Apache NetBeans downloaded. But at the same time, we also need a runtime environment that is called JDK. So we can actually Google that as well. So that we get to see what our JDK is about. So we open a new page, and we can see where we download our Oracle. And so when we started, I'd also mentioned that we can do it with Visual Code, which is a text editor that can also run our code. Okay, but if we were to work with Visual Code, we'll need to add some plugins. So this is also available for download online, where you can just also type out Visual Code, and then it gives you a link where you can download it. So part of the lesson, we need to know how to actually install NetBeans and our JDK, which is there. Although if you come this side now, you might have an issue of registering your product. So let's actually try and find another route, because if I click on download, it will then tell me to register for EOE Oracle, but the process is quite tedious. Let's actually do something that's faster. It would have been easier if our internet was fast today. Today it's a bit on the slow side. Okay, so let's say we've got some code. There's an example set of code that we've got. Let's pick we want to I think what would be easier is simple text. So let's work with text. Our texts can be rotate text like we've got there. Okay, so this is maybe a bit on the hectic side, but we can explain how some of these things work, and we can have a sample code that we'll be working with. So because we don't have certain plugins, we might not be able to save our file properly. But let's start from how we create our file and we work from there. So in general, what we are working with is code a class. So we need to create a public class, which would then have some content that we want to have in our code. All right. So in this particular one, it extends an application and we need to have the curly brackets. So to create our project from scratch, we can actually do the following and we say basics of Java, that, and then we have our public class, and then we need to name the class as whatever element we need to have it as. Maybe we say, let's just copy from Kuno. The public class main, and then we have our curly brackets. From your end, it's not very clear. Let me see if I can change the background. What I'll do is I'll put it on a white screen so that you can see what we are talking about. So we want a public class main, and let's have a notepad, and then we just copy this, and we put it on a white screen. This is what we've got in our code, right? At the same time, we also need like what we've got there, we then need to have a function that might do certain things. So in this particular case, we've got a function that gives us a start, etc. But we don't want to learn about that as yet. Okay, we just want to learn about the basics of Java and how we can actually work with our Java. So I think let me do it on the white screen, then I show you how it works on Visual Code. It will require you to download some content because you won't have all the content within Visual Code. So to start off with, we just need to know the basics. You can create what are called variables, right? So our variables will be int, and then we need a variable name, which can be a, right? So this we call a variable. We also can get a character b, which is also another variable. But here's how they work. A becomes an identifier for our first variable, which is of int type. And character becomes our second variable, which identifies our variable b. Okay? So what this then means is int and character are known as data types. So we can then add to that and say variable of type integer, which is our int. And then the next one is of type character. like that. And then, so from there, we can then also be able to do the next bit of our variables. We can also do that part as we are creating the variables, or what we call declaring the variables. But in this case, we want to just see how we can initialize them. So we can say A is equal to 12 because that is our number. And then we can also say B is equal to a character, which can be G, and then put a semicolon. So the first thing that we've got is we want to create our variables, which is A and B. We also need to have a data type that tells us what A and B is. We also then need to initialize. So when we get to B, we call this initialization. So we initialize a variable to an assigned value. Okay, the next bit is the same as this. So initialize variable to an assigned value, like that. So this is what we can be working on it. So if I copy this as it is and I paste it in my Visual Code, it will then tell me the content that is lacking, right? So I'll need to save this as a Java file. So I can go to my documents, create a folder, and I save it as Java code. I double click, I then save it as intro.java. And then I don't want it to be plain text, I want it to be Java. So I click on save, and then it changes. The appearance of the text changes, and then my Visual Code then asks me a question. Do you want to install the recommended extensions for Java? So we can go on show recommendations, and it gives us the extensions that are available for our Java. So I can click on install, and then it starts installing the Java content that we need. And it makes life a little bit easier because now if we run this, we can then be able to see how our code executes and works. I'm sorry for the color. I wish I knew how to actually play around with it so that it changes. Let me see if I can find out how to do that. Yeah, I think it's under settings. Okay, maybe let's just continue. We'll figure out how to change this color. We'll work with the white space as it is. So as you can see in this particular code, it is Java for a rotate text. We've got some imports, right? So these are elements that we would want to work with that are part of our Java, but may not be available in our Java platform. So the moment that we import them, we can actually be able to see how each element works. At the same time, in this particular case, we say extends an application. So we want to have a Java application that then runs and gives us uh, the following content. We've also got variables. As you can see there, we actually had int in our case, but in this case, we've got int x, and then we initialize our x in the same line, similar to what we've got there. This one, I think I can also increase the text so that it shows from your end. So we've got int x, which gives us the value for x. Int y gives us the value for y. Int red, blue, and green, right? And then we can then be able to use the following. We've got text equals to new text. That's a format that is a little bit advanced for what you guys are supposed to be doing, but I can just explain how it works. When we want to display our content, let's say in our code, we want to display this. We then need what is known as an output function. Right? So what does our output function do? It simply gives us the content that is there. So it can be something like, excuse me, I'm forgetting some of the content, but I think it should be system dot print line. I think that's the line. Okay. I think this is a better way of actually doing it. Right. So according to this one, we can actually use that line. So to output, we just put system.out.print hello. So this is an output function for this. At the same time, like I'm noticing there, I'd actually copied the wrong setup. We need a class name. We need a main function. So this is wrong. We need to actually just change it a little bit. So we can then put it as follows. The class is demo. The public static void is our main. So we're just gonna edit that and work with our code. So maybe let me explain that so that we are on the same page. Tichiri chose route in Dukuman. Oh, okay. So we want to change this part. We also want to add an extra bracket. So my brackets anoshanda so. Everywhere where we have a class, we need to put the name. So we can put our class name to be demo. So demo has this bracket and that bracket. Then from there, we need to have our main, where our main has that bracket and that bracket. So we also need to copy the public static void. So this I had also not explained, but let's explain it, and we can start correcting our code as we proceed. So public class demo, and then public static void main. We've got our brackets. Sakama brackets so For the first set of brackets, it means everything in this section is under our class demo. And what is a class? A class is a object that we will be able to use to run our code. Then our main, what is our main? Our main is a function that will be able to put content in that we can be able to then run with to see how this works. And then, so that is what our class and our main does. So at the same time, oh, we actually had errors here. Okay, I'm not sure why we are having errors here, but we can find out how we work with this. There's so many ways to do the same thing. Okay, we just want to at least get our code working, then we can start from there. So maybe if we were to have nodes, we are then saying our public class demo is the main class that we'll be working with. So we've got classes and functions. Then the public static void main is a function that we can work with and we use for running this content, right? And then system out gives us the output that we want to work with. Okay, guys. Let's have an alternative so that we can get to see how these things work and build from there. So if I'm to also put this code that we've edited to our Visual Code editor, it's also supposed to just highlight if the syntax is correct. Right, at least we've got something that is working now. Okay, so with this part, we might need to edit a few things, but we can still work with the same content that we've got, whereby we've got the same concept that we had in our example, but it's changed slightly to the following. So the package is whatever, okay? We might need to name a package. So in our example, we need to name our package name. So we call it demo project, like that. And then these are the import files that we had actually spoken about, but we can as well see what they do here. We want to work with Java utilities. We want to work with Java languages. We want to work with Java input and output. And then the name of the class has to be main only if the class is public. Okay, so we work with the public class there. And you can see these are not actually explained what they are, they're comments. Okay, so let's actually test out our code. And our code in this particular instance is what is in the main. So what we can do is we can simply just copy what we've got in the main and paste it, because at least we've explained how it works. So we come here and we put our code where it says your code goes here. Okay, so this is what we've got. We then come to the bottom there and we click where it says run. If we don't have any errors, an output or some output of what we are expecting to get. Okay, I don't know what happened here. It was not supposed to do that. Let's try and repaste our code and see what happens. I'm not sure why it did that. It's just supposed to give us the output. Okay, I think this time it worked. There we go. If we've got any errors, it will give us. Yes, we've got an error. We've not put a semicolon there. So our IDEs are particular with what we do or what we use. So let me make it a bit larger. As you can see, this line in a int a, there is a semicolon kana. This line in a character b, there is a colon. So you have a complaint now to waisaji, waisa character is serious. So that's not really a big problem. I'll just need to go to edit and then change that line and put a semicolon and make sure that panapango bakadaro, then run it. Okay, so in this particular instance, we had a successful run. So the output that we've got is hello, which is just simply what we put in the output. Okay, but we would want something outside of hello. Okay, so let's say we want to print B, for example. Okay, we can simply come to our edit. This is a bit difficult now if we're using per internet because we don't get to then learn the basics of what we want to learn. Okay, let's edit and let's add one more change or a few more changes. We want to put system dot out dot print. We open and we close brackets. In the brackets, we don't want to put maningeda. We just want to put the variable which is b. Okay, so this is how we also use of variables like that. So we can save and run it, and we see what the output brings. This time it's taking a bit longer. I don't know why. Let's see our downloads. But what it's then supposed to just give us, uh, right below our hello, it's supposed to just give us B. Sorry, it's supposed to give us G, which is the value that is there. So here's how our code works. Our code works this way. We have the following. In the internet code, we've got imports. Import, which means this is content that the IDE contains, but the code needs for execution. Okay, so example is IO, which stands for input and output. Okay, the next bit is our class, right, which is an object that we use throughout the program. Then the next one is our main, which is a function we use for our code. Then from there, we've got a data type, which is a set of values that we use for getting a number or a letter. Or a special character. Then the next thing was system out. Displays content that is placed within the brackets like that. So these are the key elements of what our Java does. So it's pretty much the basics of what you guys are supposed to have. I will add with a few notes that you can play around with. Our time did not allow us to do more than just this, but I will put maybe a little bit of extra code, and I will design an assignment that I would want you to actually work with, which will then be your assessment for this short lecture that you've done. You really don't need to know much, but it's a start to have a beginning point where you then know how the code works. I would also want you to have a copy of the code I was working with here. I might also need you to just find out what each of these elements do. And if you've got a programming platform, you can then be able to test it out and see what it does. So we also then said, here are the things that you need. You need to download Apache Netbeans. You need to download JDK installer. You also need to have a JRE installer as well. If you can, I would need you to have a notepad editor like that. The default not editor, it works. But the reason why I wanted you to have a notepad editor is you can see with this one, it will, I don't know now if it's clear from that end, but I'll send you this video. It actually highlights some of the areas where you have a problem. Like for example, if I was working with this notepad editor, where we have our character B here, it would have highlighted that. So shanane I unogona kupotsa kuti wasiya ka colon. It runs Visual Code, yes. Yes, that's the one in Anshandis. So at least if you can just play around with that, I'm not even sure how you can then show me you've done it, but just practice. And if you can get it done, we are good to go. So maybe as an assessment assignment type thing, you can follow this video, but towards that I put some extra content that I'd want you to have. I'd want you to create a simple program that does the following. Okay, gets input of a number and displays that number, gets input of a name and displays that name, gets input of a number with decimal place and displays it, gets two numbers and displays the following. So we want the addition, subtraction, division, multiplication of the numbers. So this is of the numbers for like that. So I think with this, you guys will be done. And you can work on that. I think that's a bit on your intro. I can work on maybe a bit more content if I do have time, give you a link for the video, and then you can be able to play around with what you can play around with in your own time. Are there any questions?